Man, listen, I gotta tell you, when I first heard what Al Pacino said about Islam, I literally leaned back in my chair and went, "Oh, wait, what? Pacino, talking about Islam? What made him bring that up? What did he find that touched him so deeply? And here's the real question: how does a guy who's lived his whole life in Hollywood, surrounded by fame, chaos, and noise, suddenly start talking about peace, discipline, and God?" That's the part that blew my mind, man. Because this is Al Pacino we're talking about, one of the greatest actors to ever walk the earth, a man who's seen it all: power, success, darkness, every kind of story imaginable. And yet, out of nowhere, he starts speaking about Islam, not casually, not for attention, but with this quiet depth, like something in it touched his soul. That really hit me, because you rarely hear that kind of reflection from someone at his level. So I started thinking, what did he really mean? He wasn't preaching. He wasn't trying to sound philosophical. It was just real. It was like he'd been searching all his life and finally found a kind of peace, or at least a respect for what Islam teaches. And man, that made me curious as hell. I've had guests on this podcast from every walk of life: scientists, monks, soldiers, priests, even atheists, and every single one of them is searching for meaning. But when someone like Pacino says he's been inspired by Islam, that's not something you just brush off. He said something that really stuck with me. Something like, Islam isn't just a religion, it's discipline, it's awareness, it's respect for the Creator and for creation. And that line, it just echoed in my head, man, because that's something we all crave: discipline, awareness, respect. The modern world's lost that. We're surrounded by distractions, chaos everywhere, addicted to instant gratification, dopamine hits, screens, validation, the next big thing. But Islam, from what I've learned, it's about grounding yourself. It's about stepping back, realizing there's something bigger than you. And that's what Pacino seemed to be hinting at, that he'd found calm in that realization. I remember sitting in my studio listening to that clip again and again. I was like, is this real? Is Al Pacino actually saying this? And it wasn't about conversion or anything. It was about truth, about recognizing that there's wisdom in a system that's been around for over 1,000 years. You can't ignore that, man. You can't ignore a way of life that's helped millions live with purpose and balance. So when someone as introspective as Pacino acknowledges that, you gotta pay attention, I started digging deeper, watching interviews with scholars. Pay attention. I started digging deeper, watching interviews with scholars, listening to lectures about what Islam really teaches. And honestly, there's a lot of misunderstanding out there. The moment people hear the word Islam, they think politics, conflict, headlines. But when you strip that noise away and read the message itself, it's about submission. Not weak submission, but powerful submission. Submitting your ego to something higher. That's not weakness. That's strength. And that idea really resonated with me, because in my world, ego destroys people. Fame, money, success, it inflates your ego until you lose your soul. And then here comes this ancient system saying, kill your ego before it kills you. That's powerful. Pacino talked about peace, peace in knowing you're not God. And man, that hit hard, because we live in an age where everyone's trying to be their own God. Everyone's like, I control my destiny, I make my rules. And sure, there's empowerment in that, but there's also emptiness, loneliness. You lose connection with something sacred. You start thinking everything's random, meaningless. But Islam flips that. It says everything has purpose, every breath, every sunrise, every test. That's such a different lens, man. It's humbling. I've had conversations about psychedelics, altered consciousness, about God as energy or vibration that we can connect through awareness. And the wild thing is, Islam already talks about that through remembrance, through zikr, through prayer, through discipline. It's structured spirituality, not chaos, not chasing the next trip, but grounding yourself so deeply that you see truth without needing external stimulants. That's next level consciousness. And what's even crazier, the Quran doesn't just talk about faith. It talks about science, psychology, the universe, the self. It's like this manual for the human experience. And here's Pacino, this legend, recognizing that wisdom at his age. That's beautiful, man, because it shows no matter how far you go in life, no matter how much you achieve, there's always a part of you searching for truth. And sometimes you find it in the most unexpected place. You could tell Pacino wasn't just fascinated intellectually, he was touched spiritually. He said something like, I've read things in the Quran that made me pause, made me feel small in a good way. That's humility, and humility's rare today. We're taught to dominate, to win, to be the biggest. But maybe peace is in realizing you're just part of something infinite, something divine. And when you align with that, you stop chasing the noise. I've always been open-minded about religion. I don't claim to know the truth. I'm just a student of ideas. But this made me look at Islam differently, not as a set of rules, but as a philosophy, a discipline that builds people into better versions of themselves, kind, balanced, grateful, just. And when you see someone like Al Pacino, a man who's seen all sides of life, appreciate that message, you can't help but think, maybe that's what we've all been missing. So yeah, I was shocked, but it was a good shock. It woke me up to something I hadn't explored before. And I started asking myself, what if the peace we're chasing through meditation, psychedelics, therapy, was already mapped out centuries ago in these teachings? What if discipline, faith, and surrender aren't restrictions, but the keys to freedom? That's something worth thinking about. Because man, when I heard Pacino's words, I couldn't shake the feeling. You know how sometimes someone says something and it just sticks, keeps replaying in your head like a song you can't turn off? That was it. I started reflecting on my own life, all the times I chased meaning through extreme experiences, ayahuasca trips, deep talks, pushing limits. And sure, they gave me glimpses of truth, but this idea that discipline and devotion could lead to peace, that was something different. It wasn't about escaping, it was about aligning. Islam teaches you how to align your actions with your purpose. That's deep, man. And it made me wonder, why are we so afraid of that word, submission? In the modern mindset, submission sounds like weakness. But if you think about it, what's stronger than admitting you don't control everything? What's braver than surrendering your ego to something higher? That's not weakness. That's freedom. Our society glorifies individuality. Be your own God, your own truth. Sounds empowering, right? But it isolates us. It removes accountability, community, connection, faith. Islam brings those things back. It tells you you're part of a family, a brotherhood, a responsibility to humanity. It unites people under one creator. And that's something the world desperately needs right now. Pacino said something else that really hit me. He said, the prophet's words aren't about religion. They're about living right. And that stuck with me. Because when you read the sayings of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, it's all about mercy, justice, character. How you treat people, how you walk, how you speak. It's about sincerity. That's what I respect. Because belief alone isn't enough. You have to live it. And that's where Islam stands out. It demands both belief and action. And I get why Pacino was so moved. Because when you read about this prophet, humble, forgiving, valuing knowledge, respecting women, you realize this isn't just ancient history. It's a model of humanity we've forgotten. The world could use that example right now. I've had Muslims on this show before, and I always noticed one thing, that calm peace they carry. They're not loud about their faith. They live it quietly. There's something magnetic about that. And now it makes sense. Because when your life has structure, gratitude, prayer, you don't chase noise. You're already full inside. That's what I heard in Pacino's voice. He sounded complete, and it made me realize maybe we in the West have been chasing happiness in the wrong direction. We chase experiences, possessions, achievements. But what if real happiness comes from humility, from faith, from giving, from connecting with the source? That's what Islam teaches. Happiness isn't something you find, it's something you become. When your heart aligns with truth, I remember once talking to a neuroscientist about meditation, and he said prayer activates the same parts of the brain that control focus and empathy. That's wild, right? So when Muslims pray 5 times a day, they're literally rewiring their brain towards peace and discipline. That's science confirming faith. And that connection, that bridge between reason and belief, that's what I love. It's not blind faith. It's experiential. Pacino's realization? Man, it's poetic. Here's a guy who's played gangsters, kings, devils, lovers, every face of humanity, and in the end, he finds peace not in fame, but in reflection. That's humbling. I think we all reach that point someday, when we realize the world can't fill the hole inside. You can have everything, money, followers, success, but if you don't have faith or connection to something higher, it's hollow. And maybe that's what Al Pacino was really trying to say. Maybe that's what Islam showed him, that you don't have to control life, you just have to live it with awareness, gratitude, and submission to the one who created it all.